Welcome back. This channel exists because of your support. Subscribe, hit like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Now let's get into the story. Last Thursday evening, I walked into my own condo and discovered my wife was planning to humiliate me at the most important professional event of my career. Not because she actually wanted to leave me, but because her friends convinced her it would be a fun little test to see how much I really loved her. I had come home early from work, something I rarely do. A client meeting got canceled at the last minute, so I left the office at 5:30 instead of my usual 8 o'clock. The condo in Chicago's Gold Coast felt quiet when I stepped inside, but I could hear a muffled voice coming from the home office down the hall. Melissa was on a video call, and I recognized the voices immediately. Whitney, Jennifer, and Kristen. The same three women who had been filling her head with toxic relationship advice for months. I stopped in the hallway, hidden from the camera's view, but close enough to hear every word clearly through the partially open door. My briefcase was still in my hand. I set it down silently on the hardwood floor, barely breathing as I listened. What I heard made my blood run cold. "The gala is perfect," Whitney was saying, her voice carrying that confident tone she always used when dispensing relationship wisdom. Whitney Palmer, divorced twice by 40, but somehow considered the expert on relationships in their friend group. His colleagues will be there, his boss, everyone. He'll have to respond. I leaned closer to the doorframe, my heart pounding. The gala. She was talking about the Metropolitan Club event on Tuesday, the firm's biggest fundraiser of the year. The event where Harrison Blackwell, the senior partner who controlled my career trajectory, would be watching everything I did. But what if I'm wrong about him being emotionally unavailable? Melissa asked. I could hear the uncertainty in her voice. Girl, when's the last time he told you he loved you without you saying it first? That was Jennifer, recently engaged and constantly testing her own fiancé. There was a pause. I don't know. Exactly, Kristen chimed in. She was the single one who somehow felt qualified to give marriage advice. This test will show you who he really is. My jaw clenched as the full scope of their plan unfolded. They were coaching Melissa to stage an emotional breakup scene at the charity gala on Tuesday. The Metropolitan Club. 200 guests. Harrison would be there. Catherine Rodriguez. 3 of our biggest clients. And Melissa was supposed to publicly accuse me of being emotionally unavailable, forcing me to make some kind of grand romantic gesture in front of everyone. Men like Andrew need public pressure to show emotion, Whitney continued. He cares too much about his reputation to just walk away in front of everyone. Trust me. My fiancé cried and practically proposed again when I did this at his company party, Jennifer added with a laugh. It was so romantic. What if he just agrees? Melissa asked quietly. What if he doesn't fight for me? He won't. Not in public, Whitney assured her. Make it dramatic, but serious. Tell him you've been thinking, and you're not sure if you're happy anymore. Use the word disappointed. Men hate that word. I heard Melissa sigh deeply. When exactly should I do it? Between dinner and dancing, Kristen said. When people are mingling, but before anyone's too drunk to remember. Maximum witnesses, maximum pressure. My hands formed fists at my sides. These women were treating my marriage like a social experiment. But what shocked me most was that Melissa was actually listening to them. Document everything, Whitney added. I want to see his face when you drop the bomb. They all laughed. I had heard enough. I quietly backed away from the hallway, picked up my briefcase from where I'd set it down, and slipped out the front door, my mind racing. Part of me wanted to storm in there and confront all of them immediately. But something held me back. A better idea was forming. If Melissa wanted to play games with our marriage, if she wanted to test me in front of 200 people, then she was about to learn a very important lesson about her husband. I wasn't the type of man who begged or pleaded. I wasn't going to dance like a puppet for anyone's entertainment. And I sure wasn't going to let 3 amateur relationship coaches destroy everything I'd worked for at the firm. I got back in my car and drove around the block, giving myself time to think. By the time I returned home 20 minutes later, her friends had logged off, and she was in the kitchen preparing dinner like nothing had happened. Hey honey, you're home early, she said, kissing my cheek with what I now realized was completely fake affection. Traffic was light today, I replied, studying her face. She looked nervous, fidgeting with the kitchen towel in her hands. During dinner, she was unusually quiet, clearly rehearsing whatever script her friends had given her. I ate calmly, making normal conversation about work, the weather, anything mundane. But inside, I was planning my response to her little test. That night, as we lay in bed, she was restless beside me. I could practically hear the wheels turning in her head, probably wondering if she should go through with her friend's ridiculous plan. I already knew she would. The seed had been planted, and women like Whitney don't let their victims back out easily. But here's what Melissa and her amateur psychologist friends didn't understand about me. I don't play games with people I love, and I sure don't tolerate people who try to play games with me. If she wanted to test whether I would fight for our marriage in public, she was about to discover that I don't perform on command. The weekend arrived right on schedule, and so did Melissa's guilt. Friday morning, she was more affectionate than usual, making my coffee just the way I like it, asking about my day with exaggerated interest. Classic compensation behavior. I'd seen it in negotiations 1,000 times. People trying to make up for something they knew was wrong before they actually did it. She mentioned the gala at least 5 times during breakfast alone. What are you wearing? Who exactly will be there? Is it black tie or just cocktail? Do you think it'll run late? Each question felt like she was gathering intelligence, confirming details for her operation. It's important, I told her calmly when she asked for the 3rd time if it was really such a big deal. Harrison Blackwell will be there. He's the senior partner who has final say on my promotion to senior associate. Catherine Rodriguez, too, the managing partner. And Thomas Whitmore, the client whose account I've been handling all year. Her eyes widened slightly. Good. She was starting to understand the stakes. But not enough to back out, apparently. Friday evening, she went to what she called book club, but was actually another strategy session with Whitney and her crew. They met at some wine bar in River North. I didn't follow her, I'm not that guy, but I tracked the time. She left at 6. She came home at 9:30. 3.5 hours to discuss a book? Please. When she came home, she was energized but anxious, checking her phone constantly. I was reading in the living room when she walked in, and I watched her over the top of my book. She jumped slightly when she saw me, like she'd forgotten I'd be there. How was book club? I asked. Oh, it was good. We're reading this new thriller. Very twisty. She was a terrible liar. She couldn't even remember what book they were supposedly discussing. Later that night, I heard her texting in the bathroom. The clicking of her phone screen, the little whoosh sounds of messages sending. Melissa never took her phone into the bathroom. That was new. Saturday, Melissa suggested we visit the Art Institute of Chicago, which was unusual. We'd been once, maybe twice in the 4 years we'd been married. She wasn't particularly into art, but she seemed desperate to do something normal, something couple-like, maybe to assuage her guilty conscience. We walked through the galleries, and she took photos constantly. Not of the art, of us. Selfies with paintings in the background. Pictures of me looking at sculptures. It felt performative, like she was documenting evidence of our relationship before she tried to blow it up. At one point, I pretended to be absorbed in a Monet while she stepped away to take a phone call. I was close enough to hear her whisper into the phone, "Tuesday is still on." I'm not backing out. Yes, I'm sure. My jaw tightened, but I kept my expression neutral, kept studying the painting like it was the most fascinating thing I'd ever seen. Sunday was the final coaching session. She claimed she was going to brunch with the girls. At 11 in the morning, she kissed me goodbye and said she'd be back by 2. She returned at 3:15, looking both determined and terrified. I spent Sunday evening in my study, doing something I rarely do outside of work. Research. I pulled up the floor plan of the Metropolitan Club, identified sight lines, noted where the main tables would be. I made a list of everyone who would be there. Harrison and Patricia Blackwell, Catherine Rodriguez, Thomas Whitmore from Whitmore Industries, and of course, Whitney, Jennifer, and Kristen. Melissa had mentioned weeks ago that she'd invited them as her guests, back when I thought it was just a normal +1 situation. Now I understood why she really wanted them there. Then I called my brother Dennis in Boston. He's an attorney too, and the only person I trust completely. You're really going to let her do this? He asked after I explained the situation. I'm going to let her learn a lesson she'll never forget, I said. Whitney and her friends don't understand men like me. We don't perform on command. What are you going to do? Something they won't expect, I replied. I'm going to treat her fake breakup exactly like a legitimate private matter that should be discussed at home. Dennis laughed. You're going to make her look crazy. I'm going to let her do that herself, I corrected. I'm just not going to play the role they've written for me. Monday passed in tense normalcy. Melissa went to work, I went to work. We exchanged polite texts throughout the day. That evening, she was quiet at dinner, clearly running through her script mentally. I acted completely normal, discussing a case I was working on, asking about her day. The calm before the storm. Tuesday arrived like any other day. I went to work, handled my cases, prepared for the evening. Melissa texted me 3 times asking what time I'd be home, what I was wearing, whether I was stressed. I responded normally to everything. Home by 5. Wearing the navy Tom Ford. Not stressed. The last part was a lie. I wasn't stressed about her little test. I was ready for it. But I was concerned about the potential fallout if I didn't handle it perfectly. One wrong move, and this could damage everything I'd worked for. At 5 o'clock, I left the office and went home to change. Melissa was already dressed when I arrived. Red dress, deliberately chosen to stand out in a sea of black and navy. It was bold, eye-catching, the kind of thing that would make people remember her. Hair and makeup were perfect, professional. She'd spent serious time getting ready for this performance. She looked beautiful and absolutely terrified. "You look stunning," I said, because it was true. "Thanks," she whispered, her voice tight. Her hands were shaking slightly as she fastened her earring. I showered and changed into my tuxedo, taking my time, staying calm. In the mirror, I practiced my expression. Composed. Professional. Unshakable. This was just another negotiation, I told myself. Another situation that required strategy over emotion. We drove to the Metropolitan Club in relative silence. She clutched my arm in the car, her fingers digging in slightly. I could feel her pulse racing through her grip. Part of me felt sorry for her. She was clearly dreading this. But she'd made her choice when she listened to Whitney instead of talking to me. The club was spectacular, as always. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan. Exactly the kind of venue where a public scene would be remembered by everyone present. We arrived at 6:30. Harrison Blackwell approached us almost immediately. "Andrew, Melissa, wonderful to see you both," he said warmly. "Melissa, you look lovely this evening." "Thank you, Mr. Blackwell," she managed, her smile shaky. I made small talk with Harrison about a recent case, introducing Melissa into the conversation naturally. She barely spoke. I could see Whitney, Jennifer, and Kristen across the room, watching us like hawks. At 7 o'clock, Melissa excused herself to the powder room. I watched her beeline for her friends instead. They huddled near the entrance to the main ballroom, whispering urgently. Whitney put her hand on Melissa's shoulder, clearly giving her a pep talk. Jennifer was holding up her phone, probably showing Melissa something. Kristen kept glancing at me and smiling. Melissa returned 5 minutes later, looking pale but determined. Cocktail hour passed in a blur of networking. I introduced Melissa to Catherine Rodriguez, who complimented her dress. I spoke with Thomas Whitmore about expanding our firm's work with his company. He was impressed with a contract I'd negotiated the previous month. "You've got a sharp mind, Andrew," Whitmore said. "I'm telling Harrison we need you on more of our matters." I thanked him, noting Melissa's growing anxiety beside me. Every time I engaged professionally with someone important, she seemed to realize more deeply what she was about to risk. Dinner seating was arranged by the firm. Melissa and I sat at the main table with Harrison and Patricia Blackwell, Catherine Rodriguez and her husband, and 2 other partners with their spouses. Whitney's group was 2 tables away, positioned with a clear view of us. Melissa barely touched her food. I ate normally, participated in conversation, laughed at Harrison's stories about law school, sipped the red wine that had been poured for the dinner service. Catherine complimented the centerpieces. Patricia asked Melissa about her marketing work, and Melissa gave distracted one-word answers. At 8:45, between dinner and the start of dancing, Melissa excused herself again. Another 5-minute absence. When she returned, her jaw was set. I saw Whitney give her a thumbs up from across the room. This was it. We had both stood up from the table, preparing to move toward the dance floor area where others were beginning to mingle, when Melissa turned to me. "Andrew, can we talk for a moment?" she asked, her voice slightly too loud. I set down my wine glass and looked at her with genuine attention. "Of course. Is everything all right?" "No, actually, it's not." Her voice rose another notch. Nearby conversations began to quiet. "I need to say something I've been holding in." I maintained calm, attentive eye contact. Harrison glanced over with concern. Catherine's expression shifted to worry. Melissa took a deep breath and delivered her rehearsed lines. I've been thinking a lot about us lately, and I realize I can't keep pretending everything is fine. You're emotionally unavailable, Andrew. I never know what you're feeling. You never share yourself with me. I feel like I'm married to a stranger who just goes through the motions. I'm disappointed, and I'm not sure I can keep living like this. The room around us had gone almost completely silent. At least 30 people were watching now. I could see Whitney with her phone out at her table. Jennifer had her hand over her mouth. Kristen was grinning. This was the moment where I was supposed to panic, apologize, maybe even cry, beg her to reconsider, make promises to change, prove my devotion through desperate emotional display. I did none of those things. Instead, I took a slow, deliberate breath, set my napkin on the table with careful precision, straightened my posture, and when I spoke, my voice was measured, professional, and calm. Melissa, I appreciate you sharing your feelings. These are serious concerns about our marriage. I paused, letting that sink in. However, this isn't the appropriate venue for this conversation. We should discuss this privately at home tonight, where we can give it the attention it deserves. I'm sure our friends and colleagues would agree that marital issues are best addressed in private. Her face went blank. This wasn't in the script. Around us, I could see the interpretation forming in real time. Harrison nodded slightly, as if approving my handling of a difficult situation. Catherine's expression shifted from concern to sympathy, but the sympathy was directed at me, not Melissa. Thomas Whitmore, 3 tables away, was watching with the keen attention of a man who had seen a lot in business and recognized class under pressure. Melissa blinked rapidly, trying to recover. But I need you to hear me now. This is important. I understand it's important to you, I replied, still completely calm. That's exactly why we should discuss it properly, in private. I respect you too much to have this conversation as a spectacle. I stood and offered her my arm. Please excuse us, Harrison. We'll step out for a moment. But Melissa didn't take my arm. She pulled away, and her voice rose again. Don't patronize me. I'm serious about this. The room's interpretation solidified in that instant. I could see it happening. Faces around us registered concern, sympathy, even pity. But it wasn't for Melissa. It was for me. Catherine Rodriguez stood up. Perhaps I can help. Melissa, dear, would you like to step into the ladies' lounge? I'm happy to sit with you. No, Melissa said, her voice breaking. I need to go. The offer was kind, but Catherine's intervention cemented the narrative. Everyone in the room now believed that Melissa was having some kind of emotional crisis, and I was handling it with remarkable dignity and grace. Her dramatic accusations came across not as legitimate relationship concerns, but as the ravings of someone under stress. Exactly the opposite of what Whitney had planned. I saw Harrison lean toward the partner next to him and whisper something. The partner nodded, glancing at me with what looked like approval. Melissa's eyes darted around the room, and I watched her realize what had happened. People weren't looking at me with judgment. They were looking at her with concern. She wasn't the wronged wife demanding her due. She was the unstable one causing a scene. Her eyes filled with tears, real ones this time, not strategic. You don't even care, do you? She said, her voice breaking. I maintained my composure. Melissa, I care very much. That's why I'm asking us to step outside and talk about this properly. I'm not going to debate our marriage in front of 200 people. That's not fair to you, to me, or to everyone here who came for a charity event. I extended my hand again. Please, let's go talk. She looked at my hand like it was a trap. Then she looked at Whitney, who was frantically shaking her head, trying to signal her to keep going. But Melissa's script had run out. She had no plan for this response. Maybe I don't need the full month to think about it, she said, which made no sense in context and only confused people further. A month to think about what? I asked gently, genuinely curious where she was going with this. She opened her mouth, closed it. Tears started running down her cheeks. Then she turned and walked toward the exit. Not took my hand. Not let Catherine help her. Just walked away, flustered and humiliated, brushing past Whitney and her friends without a word. I watched her go, then turned back to the table. I apologize for the disruption, I said to Harrison and the others. Please, continue enjoying the evening. I should go check on her. Excuse me. Harrison stood and gripped my shoulder. Take your time, Andrew. These things happen. I walked out of the ballroom with my dignity completely intact. Behind me, The room erupted in whispered conversations. But I knew what they were saying. I'd seen it in their faces. Poor Andrew. His wife had some kind of breakdown. He handled it beautifully. What composure. What class. Whitney's test had backfired completely. I found Melissa in the parking garage, sitting in our car. Whitney, Jennifer, and Kristen were with her, trying to debrief what had just happened. They all looked panicked, hunched around the passenger window like conspirators whose plan had fallen apart. They all looked up when I approached, and I saw genuine fear flash across Whitney's face. "Ladies," I said calmly, my voice echoing slightly in the concrete structure. "I need to speak with my wife. Alone." Whitney stepped forward, trying to regain her authority. "She's upset, Andrew. Maybe give her some space." I looked at her directly, and I let every ounce of my controlled anger show in my eyes. I've been giving her exactly what she asked for. Now I'd like privacy with my wife. "We're just supporting our friend," Jennifer said defensively, but her voice wavered. I looked directly at her, then at Kristen, then back to Whitney. "The way you supported her when you scripted tonight's performance." Dead silence. 3 faces went pale. Kristen actually took a step backward. Melissa's head snapped up from where she'd been staring at her lap. Her eyes were red, makeup smeared. "What are you talking about?" I kept my voice level, almost casual, like I was discussing the weather. "The coaching session last Thursday. The notes in your purse. The text messages all weekend. The 4-hour brunch on Sunday. I know everything." You knew?" Melissa's voice was barely a whisper. Her face had gone completely white. "I heard Whitney explain the entire plan on your video call Thursday night. Every word. How I'd be forced to respond in public. How I care too much about my reputation. How you should use the word disappointed. How Jennifer's fiancé cried and practically proposed again. All of it." Whitney's face flushed red. "You were eavesdropping?" I walked into my own home early from work and overheard my wife plotting to manipulate me in public. I said, my voice hard now. "That's not eavesdropping, Whitney. That's discovering betrayal." Kristen tried to defend their position. "We were just trying to help Melissa get you to open up emotionally. By coaching her to humiliate me at my firm's most important event of the year?" I asked. "That's your idea of help? You don't show her enough emotion." Jennifer protested. "She needed to know you care." "So your solution was to have her ambush me in front of my senior partners, my clients, and 200 witnesses?" Melissa stared at me, her face white. "You let me do it. You knew, and you let me walk into that room and expose yourself," I finished. "Yes, I let you execute your plan exactly as Whitney designed it." "Why?" "Because you needed to learn what happens when you choose manipulation over communication." Whitney tried to deflect. "This is between you two. We should go." "No," I said firmly. "You should stay. You're very much part of this conversation. You told Melissa I'd have to respond in public. You told her I care too much about appearances. You coached her on what to say, when to say it, even how to deliver it. And you were wrong about everything." The 3 of them exchanged glances, realizing their scheme had collapsed. "You know what really happened in there?" I continued. "Every single person felt sorry for me. They think my wife had some kind of emotional crisis, and I handled it with grace. Your test didn't prove I don't care. It proved I care enough to protect her dignity, even while she was trying to destroy mine." Melissa's face crumpled as the full weight of the consequences hit her. Everyone at the gala thought she was unstable. My professional reputation was intact. Hers was in question. "You 3 are never speaking to my wife again," I said to Whitney and her friends. "Your toxic advice, your manipulation tactics, your tests, they end tonight." "You can't tell her who to be friends with," Whitney said, but her voice lacked conviction. "You're right. Melissa will make that choice herself." I looked at my wife. "But she'll make it knowing that tonight happened because she listened to you instead of talking to me." I turned back to Melissa. "I'm going back to the gala to minimize the damage to both our reputations. You can come with me, or you can stay here with them. Your choice." I didn't wait for an answer. I walked back toward the club entrance, leaving her to decide. She didn't follow. When I re-entered the ballroom, Harrison approached immediately. "Is Melissa all right? Should we call someone?" "She's heading home," I said. "I think the stress of the evening got to her." "I appreciate your concern, Harrison." He gripped my shoulder again. "You handled that with exceptional professionalism, Andrew. Not many men would have kept their composure." Catherine Rodriguez pulled me aside a few minutes later. I want to commend you on how you managed a difficult situation. Whatever is happening between you and Melissa, you protected both of your dignities tonight. That shows character. Thank you, Catherine, I replied. I believe private matters should stay private. Thomas Whitmore found me near the bar. Mitchell, I've been in business 35 years. I've seen a lot of men crumble under pressure. You didn't flinch. That's the kind of composure I want representing my company. The message was clear. What could have destroyed my career had instead enhanced it. The test had achieved the exact opposite of Whitney's prediction. I stayed at the gala another hour, then drove home alone around 11. The condo was dark when I arrived. Melissa had clearly come home earlier and gone straight to bed. I slept in the guest room. The next morning, I arrived at the office to unusual warmth from my colleagues. People asked how Melissa was doing, whether everything was okay at home. I handled each inquiry with grace, saying we were working through some things. No drama, no details. At 9:30, Harrison called me to his office. I wanted to follow up on last night, he said, gesturing for me to sit. Your handling of a personal crisis in a professional setting was exemplary. I appreciate that, Harrison. We've been discussing the senior associate promotion. He leaned back in his chair. Your name is at the top of our list, Andrew. The partnership sees a future for you here. I felt a surge of satisfaction. Exactly what Melissa's stunt could have destroyed, I had strengthened. I'm committed to maintaining the firm's standards, I said. Wednesday evening, I arrived home from work to find Melissa had been there all day. The condo was spotlessly clean, nervous activity. Every surface gleamed. The kitchen counter, usually cluttered with mail and coffee mugs, was completely clear. Even the throw pillows on the couch were perfectly arranged. Her eyes were red from crying. Her phone kept buzzing with texts from Whitney's group, vibrating against the coffee table with each incoming message. We need to talk about last night, she said as soon as I walked in. She was sitting on the couch, still in sweatpants, looking small and defeated. Yes, we do. I sat down at the kitchen table, keeping physical distance between us. This needed to be a serious conversation, not a comfort session. She got up and sat across from me, wringing her hands in her lap. I'm so sorry. I was so stupid. I should never have listened to them. The problem isn't that you listened to them, I said carefully. The problem is that you didn't talk to me. If you felt I was emotionally unavailable, you could have said so. To me. In private. We could have worked on it together, gone to counseling, figured it out. Instead, you chose to test me, to manipulate me, to try to force me into a public emotional display at the single most important professional event of my year. I just wanted to know if you really cared. Her voice broke. You wanted me to perform. I corrected, keeping my tone firm but not cruel. There's a difference. You didn't want to know if I cared. You wanted me to prove it in a way that satisfied your friends' expectations. In a way that would look good on video for their group chat. That's not about us. That's about them. She looked down at her hands, tears dripping onto the table. Do you know what Tuesday night proved? I continued. It proved you don't know me at all. You thought I'd panic. You thought I'd make a scene. You thought I valued my reputation more than your dignity. Whitney told you I'd have to respond because of my colleagues. She was completely wrong. I responded exactly as I am, by trying to protect both of us from humiliation. Everyone thinks I'm crazy now, Melissa whispered. I saw the way they looked at me. Everyone thinks you were having a difficult moment. Because I made sure that's what they thought. I could have exposed you right there, Melissa. I could have told Harrison and Catherine exactly what you were doing. I could have said, my wife is testing me based on advice from her friends. This is all fake. I could have humiliated you in front of everyone. I didn't. Because despite everything, despite the betrayal and the manipulation, I still protected you. Her eyes filled with fresh tears, and this time they were real remorse, not self-pity. Here's what happens next, I said, my voice firm. You cut off Whitney, Jennifer, and Kristen completely. No calls, no texts, no coffee dates, no, but they're my friends' protests. They tried to destroy our marriage for entertainment. They treated our relationship like a reality show. They're gone from our lives. Permanently. She hesitated, then nodded slowly. Okay. Yes, I'll do it. Second, I continued, we're going to marriage counseling. Real counseling with a licensed therapist, not advice from divorced women and relationship podcasts. You're going to learn how to communicate what you need without resorting to manipulation. And I'm going to learn how to show you I care in ways you can actually recognize. Because clearly, what I've been doing hasn't been enough. She nodded eagerly, relief washing over her face. Third, you're going to rebuild my trust. Not through grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but through consistent honesty over time. Every time you're tempted to test me, you're going to use your words instead. Every time you want to know how I feel, you're going to ask me directly instead of creating some elaborate scenario. I will. I promise, Andrew. I'll do whatever it takes. And fourth, I said, you're going to call Whitney right now and tell her exactly why you're ending the friendship. With me listening. On speaker. Because I need to know you actually understand what they did to us. Melissa's hands shook as she pulled out her phone. She took a deep breath, steadying herself, then dialed Whitney on speaker. Oh my God, Melissa. Whitney answered immediately. Are you okay? I've been so worried. Melissa took a deep breath. Whitney, I'm calling to tell you that we can't be friends anymore. What? Why? Because of Andrew? Because you convinced me to manipulate my husband at his most important professional event of the year. You told me he'd have to respond in public. You were wrong. You told me this test would show me if he really loved me. Instead, it showed everyone that I don't trust him. Your advice almost destroyed my marriage. We were just trying to help you. Whitney's voice rose defensively. Best friends don't coach you to humiliate your spouse. Best friends don't turn your marriage into a social experiment. Best friends don't film your lowest moment for group chat entertainment. You're not my best friend. You're toxic. And I'm done. You're going to regret this when he... Melissa hung up. Then she blocked Whitney's number. She did the same with Jennifer and Kristen, showing me each blocked contact. That took courage, I said. I know they've been your friends for years. But you chose us over them. That matters. 3 months later, we sat at Gibson's Bar and Steakhouse celebrating my promotion to senior associate. The partnership had been announced that afternoon. Melissa looked genuinely happy, genuinely proud. I'm so proud of you, she said, raising her wine glass. You earned this. We earned this, I replied. You've worked hard in therapy too. She smiled. I saw Whitney posted about her engagement on Instagram. How do you feel about that? Honestly, I feel sorry for the guy. She'll probably test him next month. I laughed. Probably. I never told you this, Melissa said quietly. But the worst part of that night wasn't the embarrassment. It was realizing I had become someone who would betray you for approval from people who didn't matter. And now I know the difference between friends and people who want drama. I should have been better at showing you I cared before it got to that point, I admitted. I assumed you knew. That wasn't fair either. I'm learning that being emotionally measured doesn't mean being emotionally absent. She reached across the table and took my hand. Can I ask you something? Always. Do you love me? I didn't hesitate. Yes. Every day? Even on the worst ones. She smiled. See, that wasn't so hard. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it. Jennifer, trying to reconnect from a new number. Melissa declined the call and blocked it without a second thought. You didn't even hesitate, I observed. She met my eyes. Some tests I already know the answer to. We toasted to our future, one built on communication instead of manipulation, on trust instead of games, on respect instead of tests. The gala had been a disaster for Melissa's plan, but a revelation for our marriage. Whitney had been wrong about everything. I didn't need public pressure to show I cared. I didn't crumble under her manufactured crisis. And I didn't play the role she'd written for me. Instead, I played myself. Calm, strategic, protective of my dignity and my wife's, even when she didn't deserve it. The test was over, but the lesson was permanent. Some boundaries, once crossed, change everything. The key is making sure they change things for the better. Dear listeners, that's our ending. If it resonated, subscribe to support the channel. See you next time.